My name is Dara Halvorsen, and I am 38 years old. The dinner had already been paid for by the time I set my fork down. I knew that before I walked in. I had known it for 3 weeks. I brought a notebook with me. Small, blue, hard-covered. It sat in my bag on the chair behind me all evening, while the bread baskets were passed and the wine was poured and the family around that long table laughed at the right moments and told stories I had heard before. No one at that table knew the notebook was there. No one had asked. The restaurant sat at the edge of the harbor in Gig Harbor, the kind of place where the windows face the water and the lights from the ferry terminal blink slow and steady through the rain. It was a Thursday in late October. The reservation was for 22 people. The table ran the full length of a private room in the back, with a long row of votive candles and white linens and bread baskets already half empty when we arrived. My husband's family had chosen the venue. His mother, Ingrid, had sent the invitations. His father, Rolf, had approved the menu. I had written the check that made it possible. That part no one mentioned at dinner. I sat near the middle of the table. My husband, Soren, sat to my left. His mother sat at the head. She wore a cream-colored blouse and a silver pin shaped like a leaf. She laughed at the right moments. She refilled her own wine before anyone could offer. She did not look at me once during the first course. The soup was a white bean bisque with a swirl of herb oil on the surface. It was warm. It was good. I ate it and listened to the conversation run around the table the way it always did at Halvorsen family events. Mikkel and Rolf talking about the water table on some property near Key Peninsula, Britt's husband asking about the salmon season, Ingrid managing the whole room from the head the way she always had, rotating her attention in a pattern that looked natural but wasn't. She had a gift for making each person at the table feel briefly seen. Everyone except me. Not because she was cold to me. Because I was simply not in the rotation. I had noticed this years ago. I had stopped finding it remarkable. Britt had leaned across the table at one point during the soup course and asked how work was going. I had said it was going well, that we had a large remediation project winding down out near the port. She had nodded and said that sounded interesting and then turned to say something to her husband. The conversation had moved on. I had returned to the soup. Soren had touched my hand once under the table. Just briefly. He was talking to Mikkel about something, but he had found my hand with his and pressed it for a moment and then let go. I had not looked at him. I had looked at the candle in front of me and thought about the notebook in my bag. Outside, a ferry horn sounded across the water. Low and long. I listened to it until it faded. I had been married to Soren Halvorsen for 6 years. We lived in a cedar-sided house on the north end of Fox Island, 12 minutes from the ferry dock. We had no children. That fact had been a subject of comment in this family for most of those 6 years, though the comments were always quiet. Phrased as concern. Delivered with a tilt of the head. Ingrid had 3 children. Soren was the youngest. His sister Britt lived in Olympia. His brother Mikkel lived 4 blocks from Ingrid and Rolf's house in Gig Harbor and came to Sunday dinners every week without being asked. I came when I was invited. I had learned early that these were not the same thing. I am an environmental compliance officer. I work for a marine contracting firm based out of Tacoma. My job is to read permits, track discharge thresholds, and tell project managers when they are about to do something that will cost the company more than the project is worth. I have been doing this work for 11 years. I started as a junior analyst when I was 27 and worked my way into the senior compliance role by 33. In that time I had reviewed several hundred permits and flagged 17 major threshold violations before they became reportable incidents. None of those violations made it to the regulators. That was the job. Find the problem early, document it clearly, and communicate it to the people who needed to act before the cost of inaction became irreversible. I am precise by training. I notice numbers. I notice when they change. I notice when they are heading somewhere that the people in charge of them haven't yet looked at directly. It had taken me a long time to apply that same precision to my own household. Longer than it should have. I knew that. The dinner that night was described on Ingrid's invitation as a celebration for Mikkel's promotion. He had been made a senior loan officer at the credit union where he had worked for 11 years. I was glad for him. I said so when Soren told me about it. Soren had texted his brother a congratulations that morning and Mikkel had sent back a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. 3 weeks before that dinner, Soren came into the kitchen on a Sunday afternoon and set his phone on the counter face down. He said Ingrid wanted to do something special for Mikkel. I asked what he had in mind. He said she was thinking a dinner. The whole family. Maybe the harbor place. I asked how much. He said she was looking at around $4,000 with the private room and the set menu. I didn't answer. He said his parents didn't have that kind of liquidity right now. That his dad's boat had needed engine work in August and the bill had been significant. I kept my voice even. I asked if Mikkel was contributing. Soren said Mikkel had offered $200. I said nothing. He picked up his phone. He set it down again. He said he knew it was a lot. He said it would mean a great deal to his mother. I looked out the window at the water. The tide was coming in. The grass along the bank was flattened sideways from the wind. I told him I would think about it. I thought about it for 2 days. I thought about it on the drive into Tacoma, watching the low gray clouds sit on the hills above the port. I thought about it at my desk during a permit review, during a site inspection out past Steilacoom, during a call with a project manager who wanted to push a timeline that wasn't pushable. Then I transferred $4,000 from my personal account to the joint account we used for family expenses. I did not tell Soren what I intended to do with that money yet. I simply made it available. That was how things had worked for most of our marriage. Money from me, gratitude to Ingrid. I want to be accurate about that pattern because it matters to what happened later. Soren and I had a joint account and we each had personal accounts. We split household costs evenly from the joint account. My salary was higher than his. I worked in compliance, he worked in marine salvage operations, coordinating dive teams and vessel recoveries along the South Sound. He made good money. Not the same money. I had never made an issue of it. I believed for a long time that keeping the peace was worth the imbalance. The Halvorsen family home sat on a half-acre lot 2 blocks from the harbor. Ingrid kept it immaculate. She had a garden that ran along the south fence, and in summer she grew sweet peas and dahlias and something with purple flowers that I never learned the name of. Rolf had a workshop in the garage where he built small things out of cedar. Birdhouses. Jewelry boxes. Once a toy chest for a neighbor's grandchild. He had a calm, deliberate way about him. He said very little. What he said he meant. Ingrid was different. She had a warmth that felt genuine until you were on the wrong side of it. Then it felt like a door that had simply closed. No argument. No confrontation. Just a shift in temperature. I had been on the wrong side of that door twice before. Once when I missed a family brunch because of a site inspection that could not be rescheduled. The inspection had been on a Saturday in March and had involved a discharge event at a marina in Gig Harbor, Ingrid's own town, and I had spent 6 hours on a dock in the cold instead of sitting at her table. When I had explained this to Soren afterward, he had nodded and said he understood. What I had felt over the following weeks was a slight recalibration of warmth. It was subtle. A degree or two. Enough to notice. The second time was when I suggested gently that Soren's holiday schedule might occasionally include my family as well. My parents lived in Bellingham. I saw them a handful of times a year. I had asked in October whether Thanksgiving might rotate. Soren had brought it up with his mother. She had said warmly that of course she understood, but that the Halvorsens had always done Thanksgiving together, and she hoped we could find another time for my family. The door had not slammed. It had simply, quietly recalibrated. Both times nothing was said directly. Both times I felt it for months. So I had learned to contribute without complaint. To show up. To write the check. I told myself this was pragmatism. I told myself this was what it meant to marry into an established family. I told myself the balance would shift eventually, that the early years of a marriage required accommodation. I had been telling myself that for 6 years. The first time I paid for a Halvorsen family event was 8 months after Soren and I were married. Ingrid had organized a 4th of July gathering at the house. 63 people. She had hired a caterer who charged by the head. When the final invoice came in, Rolf had looked at the number and gone very quiet. Soren had pulled me aside in the hallway and asked quietly if we could help. I wrote a check for $2,400 that afternoon and left it on the counter for Soren to handle. Ingrid thanked Soren. Soren thanked me later in the car and I said it was nothing and meant it at the time. The second time was the following spring. Britt's youngest had a birthday party and the venue Britt had booked fell through 2 weeks before the date. Ingrid found a replacement. The replacement cost $1,100 more than the original. Soren called me from his mother's kitchen and asked if we could cover the difference. I transferred the money before he got home. The third time was a rehearsal dinner for a cousin I had met once. $1,500. The cousin's name was Petra and she had married a man who worked in commercial fishing out of Westport. The dinner was at a restaurant on the waterfront in Olympia. I had sat at the far end of the table and learned that Petra was the daughter of Ingrid's sister, who I had also met once, and who had the same quality of organized warmth that Ingrid had, as though it were a family trait that had been cultivated over generations and passed down intact. I had been introduced to Petra as Soren's wife. She had looked at me with a kind, efficient interest and said she had heard so much about Soren and then moved on. I had finished my salmon and watched the water and paid the bill. The fourth time was a retirement lunch for Rolf's brother, who had fished out of Westport for 40 years. $700. His name was Arvid and he was quieter than Rolf and had big, scarred hands from 40 years of working line. He had shaken my hand at the lunch and said nice to meet you and meant it. That was the most direct thing anyone in that extended family had said to me in 3 years. Ingrid mentioned the bill on a Tuesday and by Wednesday the payment had cleared. The fifth time was ferry tickets and a hotel block for a family reunion on Orcas Island. $2,200. I booked the rooms myself and coordinated the ferry schedule so everyone had confirmed sailings. I sent each person their ticket information by email with the departure times, the deck assignments, and a note about where to park at the Anacortes terminal. It had taken 3 evenings of phone calls to the ferry reservation line and 2 rounds of corrections when 3 family members changed their arrival dates. I had rebuilt the entire sailing grid from scratch to accommodate the changes without stranding anyone at the dock. Ingrid had asked Soren if his people had gotten the details sorted. Soren said yes. She nodded and moved on. That was the 5th time. I remember it because I had come home from Orcas with a blister on my right heel from walking the dock in shoes that were wrong for the weather, and nobody had thought to mention that the weekend involved a lot of dock walking. I had not said anything about the blister. I had put a bandage on it in the hotel bathroom and kept walking. The 6th time was a kitchen renovation loan that was never repaid. $18,000. Soren had framed it as temporary. They had needed to replace the subfloor and the contractor's timeline had expanded and the scope had widened to include new cabinets and a reconfigured layout. Ingrid had shown me the plans on a Sunday afternoon. She had been excited. She had pointed to where the island would go. She had said it would finally feel like a real kitchen. I had looked at the plans and said it would be beautiful and meant it. 6 weeks later, Soren had told me the contractor's final invoice had outpaced what his parents had budgeted. He had asked if we could bridge the gap as a loan. He said they would repay it over the following year. I had transferred $18,000 the next morning. I had written it into my own ledger as permanent after 14 months of silence on the subject. Not because I believed they intended to ignore it. I believed they had simply moved past it the way people move past things they can't comfortably address. That was 3 years ago. Each contribution had something in common. I acted. Time passed. The benefit landed in the family's account. The credit landed somewhere else. I did not raise these things at dinner. I did not keep a running tally on paper. I kept it in my head because I am precise by training, and because some part of me believed that one day the number would become large enough that it would simply speak for itself. By the night of Mikkel's celebration dinner I had contributed $41,200 to the Halvorsen family across 6 years. Not counting the joint household expenses that Soren and I shared equally. Not counting gifts. Not counting the hours I had spent coordinating logistics for events I had not been asked to help plan, only asked to pay for. The $4,000 for this dinner brought the total to $45,200. I knew that number precisely. I had calculated it the Tuesday before the dinner, sitting at my desk at the office in Tacoma, looking out at the port while a barge moved slowly south. The afternoon light was flat and the water was the color of old pewter. My calendar had 2 permit reviews and a discharge compliance call on it. I had finished the first review and had 20 minutes before the call. I had used them to add up the total. I opened the blue notebook I kept in my desk drawer. It was the hard-covered kind sold at the marine supply store near the ferry dock, with a stiff cover and cream-colored pages and a thin red ribbon sewn into the spine for a bookmark. I had bought it 2 years ago for a different purpose and ended up using it for this one. I turned to the last column entry, added the $4,000 for the dinner, and wrote the new total in the margin. I drew a single line under it. Then I looked at it for a while. The number had a shape I recognized. I worked with numbers that had shapes. Discharge thresholds, remediation costs, project overruns. Numbers that meant something about what had happened and what was going to happen next. This number meant both of those things. The thing about compliance work was that problems rarely appeared all at once. They accumulated. A discharge that was 1 part per million over threshold in January was not a crisis. It was a note in a file. But if it was still 1 part per million over in February and again in March, then by April it was a pattern that needed a conversation. By June it needed a plan. By fall it needed a regulatory disclosure and a remediation timeline. The difference between the company that addressed it in January and the company that addressed it in the fall was not the nature of the problem. It was the willingness to name it clearly before the cost of naming it became too high. I had been making notes in January for 2 years. The dinner was the fall. I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer. Then I picked up the phone and joined the compliance call. The notebook had 2 sections. The first was the financial record, 11 pages of columns, date and description and amount, going back to the 4th of July check 6 years ago. The second was 3 separate entries, each written on its own page with the date at the top. Those entries were not numbers. They were sentences. Things Ingrid had said to me, written as close to verbatim as I could manage, with a note about the setting and who else had been present. The first entry was from the 2nd year of the marriage. The second was from the year after that. The third was from 14 months ago on Christmas Eve in Ingrid's kitchen, while Soren was in the garage with his father and Mikkel and I was chopping carrots at the island. I brought it with me to the dinner 3 weeks later. It sat in my bag on the chair beside me while the bread baskets were passed and the soup course came and Ingrid lifted her wine and said how proud she was of Mikkel, who smiled and looked at his plate and said it was nothing, really. No one at that table knew the notebook was there. No one had asked. Part 2. The dinner ended at 9:47 p.m. The plates had been cleared. The dessert course had come and gone. Someone had ordered a second bottle of the Willamette Pinot, and it sat mostly empty at Rolf's end of the table. Mikkel had given a short speech that was mostly self-deprecating and that everyone laughed at. Britt's husband had taken photographs with his phone, moving around the table, asking people to look up. Britt's youngest had knocked over a water glass early in the meal and cried briefly, and then fallen asleep against her mother's arm for the last hour. The candles had burned down to stubs. Then the server came through the door with a black folder in his hand. He was a young man with a careful way about him that suggested he had done this table many times and had learned to read the room before he set anything down. He set the folder at the center of the table, equidistant between Ingrid and Rolf, the way servers do when they are uncertain who is paying. Rolf reached for it. He opened it. He looked at the total. He closed it again. He passed it to Soren. Soren opened it. He looked at the number. Then he looked at me. I looked back at him. He closed the folder. He set it on the table in front of him. He looked at his hands for a moment. Then he looked up at his mother. He said quietly that he thought this had been handled. Ingrid said she had assumed Dara was taking care of it. I said nothing. Soren looked at me again. There was a tightness around his eyes I had seen before. Not anger. Something closer to appeal. I picked up my water glass and drank from it. Soren said my name. He said it the way he said it when he needed something and did not want to ask directly in front of people. I set the glass down. He said low that the total was 4,200. He said the private room had added a service charge he hadn't known about. I said I knew. He said he would explain later, that it was just tonight, that he would sort it out with his parents after. Ingrid was watching us. Her expression was patient. She had folded her hands on the table. I said I didn't think I would be covering it. The table went quiet. Not all at once. It went quiet the way a room goes quiet when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Mikkel stopped mid-sentence in a conversation with Britt's husband. Rolf looked up from his wine. Britt looked at her mother. Soren said very quietly, "What did I mean?" I said I meant I wasn't going to pay for the dinner. He said my name again. The tightness around his eyes had gone somewhere else. His jaw was set. I kept my voice even. I said it wasn't my event. Ingrid unfolded her hands. She looked at me with an expression that was almost gentle. She said she was sorry, she thought she had misunderstood. She asked if I meant I wasn't going to contribute at all. I said that was what I meant. She nodded slowly. she said in that same gentle voice that she had to admit she was a little surprised. She said she had thought of me as family. I didn't answer. She said she hoped nothing was wrong. She said it in the way that implied she already knew the answer and was giving me an opportunity to correct myself. I said nothing was wrong. She said then that she was sure I understood how much this evening had meant to Mikkel. That it wasn't really about the money, of course. That it was about what the family had wanted to do for him. Mikkel was looking at the table. She said she knew Soren and I had always been generous. She said she was sure this was just a misunderstanding. I said it wasn't a misunderstanding. The color left her face for just a moment. Then it came back and the gentle expression returned, and she tilted her head slightly. She said she didn't want to make the evening uncomfortable for anyone. I said I understood. She said carefully that she had always felt I was perhaps a little outside the family's way of doing things. That she meant that with love. That families had their own rhythms and she knew I had come from a different kind of family. Soren said, quietly, Mom. She held up one hand. She said she was just speaking honestly. She said she had tried over the years to make sure I felt included. That she hoped I knew how much Soren's happiness mattered to her. That when he was happy, she was happy. I said I appreciated that. She said she had noticed over time that I sometimes held back. That I sometimes seemed to be keeping score. She said she hoped that wasn't the case. That families didn't work that way. I looked at her. She said she was sure it wasn't. She said she was sure I was just tired, or perhaps feeling a little overwhelmed. She said big family gatherings could be a lot, especially for someone who hadn't grown up with them. I said I had grown up in a family. She said of course. She said she just meant a large one. The way Soren's family was. I said I had grown up with 2 parents and a brother. I said we had dinner together 4 nights a week and spent holidays together and argued about things and apologized for them afterward. I said that was a family. She said she was sure it was. She said she hadn't meant anything. I said I knew. She said she just thought there were rhythms in a family like theirs that took time to understand. She said she had always hoped I would get there. She said she still hoped that. Rolf had said nothing. He was looking at the candle stub in front of him. Britt said from the far end of the table that maybe they should just sort out the bill and talk about this another time. Ingrid said there was nothing to sort out. She looked at me. She said she assumed I would want to contribute something. That it wasn't about the full amount. That even a gesture would mean something. I said I wouldn't be contributing. She looked at me for a long moment. She said quietly that she had to ask. She said she hoped I wasn't going to make Soren choose. Soren said Mom again, sharper this time. She looked at him. She said she was only asking because she loved him. She said she had watched him work very hard at this marriage and she wanted it to succeed. She said she was sure I wanted that too. I kept my voice even. I said I did. She said then she hoped I would think about what family meant. What it required. She said generosity was not a transaction. She said she had never thought of it that way. I said I knew. She said she thought sometimes the way I approached things was very organized. Very measured. She said that was a wonderful quality in a professional context. She said families were different. She said you couldn't run a marriage like a compliance audit. Soren's hand moved on the table. He didn't say anything. I said I understood what she meant. She said she was glad. She looked at the black folder. She said perhaps we could simply handle the bill and then spend some time thinking about what had come up tonight. I said I thought there was more to say first. She waited. I said I wanted to make sure everyone at the table had the same information. Soren looked at me. His face had gone still. I said the dinner tonight was budgeted at $4,000. I said Soren had asked me to fund it 3 weeks ago. I said I had transferred the money. The table was very quiet. I said I then made a different decision. I said I decided I wanted to be here when the bill arrived, so I could understand what happened when I wasn't the one paying for something. Ingrid said slowly that she didn't understand. I said I thought she did. She said she didn't know what I was implying. I said I wasn't implying anything. I said I was describing a pattern. She said with the same patient warmth that she thought I was upset about something and that she wished I had come to her privately. I said I had come to Soren privately. Many times. Soren said Dara. I said his name back. Quietly. He looked at me. Something shifted in his expression. Not guilt exactly. Something that had been held for a long time and had just released a fraction. Ingrid said she thought this was not the right place for this conversation. I said I agreed. I said I had one thing to add and then we could close out the evening. She waited. Her hands were flat on the table. I reached into my bag. Soren watched my hand. I took out the blue notebook. I set it on the table in front of me. I slid it slowly across the linen toward the center of the table. Ingrid looked at it. Mikkel looked at it. Rolf looked at it for the first time since I had set it down. Something moved in his face. He looked at Ingrid. I said the notebook had a record. I said it went back 6 years. Ingrid said carefully, what kind of record? I said every financial contribution I had made to this family. The amounts, the dates, and what each one had been for. She said she wasn't sure what I meant by contribution. I said I meant money. I said I meant mine. She said families supported each other. I said yes. I said that was exactly right. She looked at the notebook. She had not reached for it. I said the running total as of last Tuesday was $41,200. I said tonight's dinner would bring it to $45,200. I said I had not included gifts or hours or the kitchen renovation loan because I had decided to only count what had a clear number attached to it. The table was completely still. Britt made a sound that was not quite a word. Mikkel looked at the table. Rolf set down his wine. Soren's jaw was tight. He wasn't looking at his mother. He was looking at the candle. Ingrid said after a long moment that she thought I must be misremembering some of those numbers. I said I had the receipts. She said she thought some of those things had been gifts. That you didn't keep records of gifts. I said some of them were gifts. I said the kitchen renovation loan was not a gift. She said that had been a difficult time for them. I said I knew. I said I had written the check. She said with less warmth now that she felt this was a deeply unfair way to characterize the relationship. I kept my voice even. I said I wasn't characterizing anything. I said I was reading numbers. She said she had always tried to make me feel like part of this family. I said I knew. She said she had hoped I felt that. She said she wanted to be very clear about something. She said the events I was describing had been family decisions. She said Soren had been part of all of them. I said yes. I said he had. She said so it wasn't accurate to frame it as something I had done alone. I said I had written down what I contributed. I said Soren knew I was doing this now. Soren said nothing. She said she thought the way I had presented this in front of everyone was designed to make the family look a particular way. I said I had described what happened. She said there was a difference between describing something and characterizing it. I said I agreed. I said I had only described. She looked at the notebook again. She said 22 people had been at this table tonight. She said she hoped I understood what kind of evening I had created. I said I had not created the occasion. I said I had been invited to attend it. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Rolf was still looking at the candle stub. He had not moved. Britt said something quiet to her husband. He shook his head slightly. I said there was something else in the notebook. She stopped. I said besides the financial record, I had written down 3 things she had said to me over the last 6 years. 3 specific things with the dates. Her expression didn't change. But something went still behind it. I said I would read them if she wanted. Or I could leave it there and everyone could go home. Ingrid looked at Rolf. He was still looking at the notebook. He did not look up. Mikkel said quietly that he thought they should all just go home. Ingrid said without looking at him that she was handling this. Mikkel said nothing. Britt's husband had put down his phone. He was looking at the table. Ingrid looked back at me. She said with the patient warmth that had returned to her face that she thought reading private correspondence at a family dinner was not the kind of thing people came back from easily. She said she hoped I understood that. I said the entries weren't correspondence. I said they were my own notes. She said it amounted to the same thing. I said I didn't think so. She said she thought what I was doing was a form of performance. She said she understood I was upset. She said she had seen over the years that I processed things differently than the family was used to. She said she thought my training had given me a very particular way of approaching conflict. I kept my voice even. I said she thought my training. She said yes. I said my training had taught me to document accurately and communicate clearly. I said I thought that was useful in most contexts. She said she was sure it was. I said I was exercising both of those things tonight. Soren looked up. He asked what I meant. I looked at him. I said I meant I had choices. I said I was exercising one of them tonight. He said very quietly, "What are you doing?" I said I was sitting at a table his mother had organized, at a dinner I had funded, listening to his mother explain what family meant. He said, "Dara." I said I heard him. He said he didn't know about all of this. I said I knew he didn't. Ingrid said quietly that she thought we should all take a breath. I said that was a good idea. She looked at the notebook. She said she didn't think it was appropriate to bring financial records to a family celebration. I said I thought this was a good time. She said she felt ambushed. I said I understood. She said this wasn't who we were. She said the Halvorsons handled things privately. I said I was a Halvorson by marriage. She said carefully that sometimes she wondered if I had ever really wanted to be. I let the silence hold. She said she meant that with love. I said I knew she did. She looked at the notebook again. She looked at Soren. She looked back at me. She said very quietly that she thought some of these contributions had been Soren's decision as much as mine. Soren said, "Mom." She said she was just saying that it wasn't fair to present it as one-sided. I said I hadn't presented it as one-sided. I said I had written down what I contributed. I said if Soren had contributed separately, he was welcome to add a column. Soren said nothing. Ingrid looked at him. She looked at me. She said she thought we had gotten away from what the evening was supposed to be. I said I agreed. She said Mikkel had worked very hard for this promotion. I said I knew. I said I was glad for him. Mikkel looked up briefly. He looked back down. She said she hoped we could find a way forward that honored what this family was. I said I was sure we could. She looked at the notebook. She had still not reached for it. She said she thought perhaps we should just cover the bill and talk when things were calmer. I said the bill wasn't my responsibility tonight. She said with something under the warmth now that she didn't understand my position. I said my position was simple. I said I had funded $45,000 of family expenses over 6 years. I said tonight I had chosen not to. She said that seemed like a choice made to make a point. I said it was. She said quietly that she hoped I understood what I was doing to this family. I said I did. She said she hoped I understood what I was doing to Soren. I said I thought Soren and I would have a long conversation on the way home. Soren said, still looking at the candle, that we would. Ingrid sat back. The warmth had not left her face entirely. It had reorganized itself into something more formal. She looked at me with the expression of someone who has decided to be patient for a reason. She said she thought I was a very organized person. I said thank you. She said she thought sometimes organized people forgot that not everything could be managed. I said I was sure that was true. She said she hoped, in time, I would look back on this evening differently. I said I thought I would look back on it clearly. She picked up her wine. She looked at the candle. She set the glass down without drinking. Rolf had not said a word through any of it. He was still looking at the notebook. His hands were flat on the table. His face was very still. He looked at Ingrid. She did not look back at him. He looked at me. I met his eyes. He said quietly that he thought the evening was over. Ingrid looked at him. He said they would handle the bill. She said Rolf. He said they would handle it. She said nothing else. The server came back through the door. Rolf took the black folder. He opened it. He looked at the number for a moment. Then he took out his card. I watched him. I thought about the engine work on his boat in August. The significant bill. I thought about the fact that he had said nothing at this table for the better part of an hour, and that when he finally spoke it was to close the evening cleanly. I thought I understood Rolf Halvorsen better in that moment than I had in 6 years. The notebook was still on the table. I reached out and pulled it back toward me. I did not open it. I set it back in my bag. Soren was watching me. I didn't look at him. Ingrid said quietly that she hoped I knew what I had done tonight. I said I thought I did. She said she hoped I was prepared for the consequences. I kept my voice even. I said I had been preparing for a while. She looked at Soren. He did not say anything. His hands were flat on the table. She looked at me one more time. The warmth was still there, but it had thinned. What was underneath it was not anger. It was something more careful than anger. Something that was already reorganizing itself into the next version of the conversation. I met her eyes. She looked away first. Britt said something about getting the coats. People began to move. Chairs scraped back. Voices came back to normal volume in the way they do when the pressure in a room drops suddenly. I stood up. I put on my jacket. I picked up my bag. I walked to the end of the table where Mikkel was standing with his wife, who had said almost nothing all evening and who now looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. I told Mikkel congratulations on the promotion. I said it was well deserved. He said thank you. He said it quietly. I said what he had done at the credit union over 11 years was consistent, serious work, and I was glad the institution had recognized it. He nodded. His wife had been standing beside him the entire time. She had not said anything all evening. She was a quiet woman with dark hair and an expression that was usually neutral and tonight was not. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said very quietly that she thought I had handled the evening well. I looked at her. She said she hoped things settled down. I said I thought they would. She gave a small nod. I understood without further conversation that she had her own version of some of what had happened at that table, and that it was not mine to ask about. I nodded once. Then I walked toward the door. I was in the parking lot when Soren caught up with me. The rain had started again. Fine and cold. The ferry terminal lights were blurred across the water. I could hear the diesel idle of something large moving out in the channel. I stood beside our car and waited. He came through the restaurant door and walked toward me with his hands in his coat pockets. He stopped a few feet away. He said he didn't know. I said I knew he didn't. He said he should have. I said yes. He stood there. The rain was very light. It collected on the shoulders of his jacket and didn't soak in, just beaded and ran off. He said he didn't know what to say. I said we didn't have to say anything tonight. He asked if I was all right. I said I was fine. He looked at the water. The rain had stopped briefly. The ferry terminal lights made a smeared reflection on the surface of the harbor. He said he hadn't known about the third entry in the notebook. Christmas Eve. I said I knew. He said he had been 15 feet away. In the garage. I said yes. He said he was sorry. I said I heard him. He looked back at me. He said $45,000. I said yes. He didn't say anything after that for a long moment. I reached into my bag. I took out my keys. I unlocked the car. I got in. I put the key in the ignition but did not start it. I sat with my hands in my lap. I looked at the rain on the windshield. I waited for Soren to get in on the other side. I did not feel anything I could name. The ferry horn sounded once across the water, low and long, and I listened to it until it was gone. Part 3. Soren drove home. I sat in the passenger seat with my bag in my lap and watched the road. The rain had picked up. The wipers moved in a steady rhythm. We crossed the bridge off the island and the headlights caught the guardrail and the dark water below, and then we were on the narrow two-lane that ran north along the shoreline. He didn't say anything for the first several minutes. I didn't either. The cedar trees came close on both sides of the road and the headlights made a tunnel of them. A deer stood at the edge of the tree line and watched us pass without moving. There was a stretch of road out here where the cell signal dropped to nothing and the world contracted to the headlights and the wet pavement and whatever was moving in the dark beyond the tree line. He said finally that he needed to understand what had happened tonight. I said I thought it had been clear. He said he meant the notebook. I said the notebook was a record. He said he hadn't known about it. I said I knew. He said he wished I had told him. I said I had told him other things. I said I had told him twice that I felt like my contributions to his family were not being acknowledged. I said he had said he would talk to his mother. I said those conversations had not happened. He said he had talked to her. I said I knew what those conversations had produced. He was quiet. I looked at the road. He said he didn't know the total was that high. I said I knew. He said $45,000 was a significant amount of money. I said yes. He said he should have been paying more attention. I said yes. He said he was sorry. I said I heard him. He looked at me briefly and then back at the road. The wipers moved. The rain came harder for a moment and then eased. He said he wanted to know what I wanted to do now. I said I wanted to go home. I said I wanted to sleep. I said I wanted to have the rest of this conversation when I wasn't sitting in a car in the rain at 11-something at night. He said that was fair. I said there was one more thing. He waited. I said the notebook wasn't the whole of it. I said I had mentioned 3 things Ingrid had said to me. I said I had dates for them. He said he had heard that. I said I was going to show him those entries when we got home. He said okay. I said I wanted him to read them himself. I said I wasn't going to interpret them for him. He said okay again. We drove the rest of the way without speaking. He pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. The rain drummed on the roof of the car. We went inside. The house was quiet and warm. I had left a lamp on in the front room. I set my bag on the kitchen table and took off my jacket. Soren put the kettle on without asking. I sat down at the table. I took out the notebook. I set it on the table between us. I opened it. Not to the financial record. I turned past those pages. There were 11 of them, covered in my handwriting, column after column, date and description and amount. I did not pause on them. I turned to the back section. There were 3 entries there, separate from the financial record, written on their own page each with the date at the top. I turned the notebook so it faced Soren. I slid it across the table toward him. He sat down. He looked at the first entry. He read it. His face didn't change right away. Then something happened around his eyes. He kept reading. He got to the second entry. He stopped partway through. He looked up at me. I said nothing. He looked back down. He finished the second entry. He read the third. He closed the notebook. He sat with his hands flat on the table. He said quietly, "When was the last one?" I said 14 months ago. I said we had been at his parents' house for Christmas Eve. I said he had been in the garage with his father and Mikkel. He said, "What had she said?" I said it was in the notebook. He said he wanted to hear me say it. I kept my voice even. I said Ingrid had told me in the kitchen while we were preparing the meal that she sometimes thought Soren needed someone who understood what it meant to build something as a family. She said she meant someone who came from the same kind of stock. She said she hoped I knew she meant it with love. Soren's jaw was tight. I said I had thanked her. I said I had finished chopping the carrots. I said I had not told him. He said, "Why not?" I said because every time I had brought something to him about his mother, it had made things harder between us and nothing had changed with her. I said I had decided to write it down instead. He said, "For how long?" I said 2 years. I said the other 2 entries were from before that. I said I had reconstructed those from memory and marked them as reconstructed. He looked at the notebook. He said he didn't know she had said those things. I said I knew. He said that wasn't acceptable. I said I agreed. He said he needed to call her. I said I thought he should wait until morning. He said he didn't want to wait. I said I understood. I said I thought the conversation would be more productive when he wasn't in the middle of processing it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. The kettle came to a boil. He got up and made the tea without asking what I wanted. He knew. He set the mug in front of me and sat back down. He said he was sorry. He said it differently than he had in the car. Slower. I said I heard him. He said he meant it. I said I knew. He looked at the notebook on the table between us. He said he wanted to understand the financial piece too. He said he wanted to go through it together. He said he wanted to know each item, not just the total. I said we could do that. He said not tonight. I said no. Not tonight. He said he wanted to ask something first. I waited. He said he knew about the 4th of July check. He said he had known about the birthday party difference because he had been the one to call me. He said he had known about the rehearsal dinner and the retirement lunch. I said yes. He said he had not known about the Orcas ferry booking. He said he had thought his mother had handled that. I said I had handled it. He said he hadn't known. I said I knew. He said he had not known about the kitchen loan total. He said he had thought the number was smaller. I said it had been $18,000. He closed his eyes for a moment. He opened them. He looked at the table. He said he should have known. I said yes. I said that was part of it. He said, "What did I mean by that?" I said I meant the not knowing had been easy because I had made it easy. I said I had managed the contributions the same way I managed compliance issues at work. Quietly, accurately, and without making anyone feel the friction until the friction was necessary to feel. He said, "And now it was necessary." I said I thought so. I said I thought it had been necessary for a while. He was quiet for a long moment. He said he wanted to know each item. He said he wanted to see the dates. I said we would do that. I said this weekend, when there was time and neither of us had just come from a dinner like that one. He said okay. He wrapped his hands around his mug. He looked at the table. He looked at me. He said he didn't know what his mother would say when he called her. I said I had some idea. He said what did I mean? I said I had written down the things she tended to say. I said I thought I could anticipate the shape of it. He almost smiled. It didn't quite arrive. He said he supposed that was the compliance officer in me. I said probably. He looked at the notebook again. He said there was something he hadn't asked yet. I waited. He said he wanted to understand why tonight specifically. He said the dinner was not the worst thing that had happened. He said the loan was worse. He said Christmas Eve was worse. He said why tonight? I thought about how to answer that. I said I had needed to see what the room looked like when the check wasn't mine to write. I said I had been trying to imagine it for a long time and I had finally decided that imagining it wasn't enough. I said I needed the actual information. He said what kind of information? I said what Rolf's face looked like. What Mikkel did. Whether anyone at that table was going to step in. Whether anyone knew. He said he hadn't known. I said I know. I said that was information too. He sat with that for a while. He said he wanted to ask me something else. I waited. He said he wanted to know if I had already decided. He said he wanted to know if tonight was the end of something or the middle of something. I kept my voice even. I said I didn't know yet. I said that was honest. He said okay. I said I had brought the notebook to that dinner because I wanted things to be visible. I said I was tired of being the only one who could see the full picture. I said I didn't know what came next. I said I knew what I wasn't willing to continue. He said what was that? I said I was not willing to continue contributing money to a family that did not acknowledge it was happening. I said I was not willing to continue hearing Ingrid's private opinions about my suitability as his wife and saying nothing about it to him. I said I was not willing to continue having conversations with him that went nowhere. He said they hadn't gone nowhere. I looked at him. He said some of them hadn't. He said he knew the difference. I said then he knew what I meant. He said yes. We sat for a while. The rain had lightened. I could hear it on the gutters but not on the windows anymore. The lamp in the front room made a soft boundary at the kitchen doorway. He said he wanted to tell me what he was going to do. I waited. He said he wanted me to hear it before he did anything. I said okay. He said he was going to set some terms. He said he was going to tell his mother that going forward, any family expenses that involved our money would come through him directly. He said he was going to tell her that the kitchen renovation loan was going to be repaid on a schedule we agreed on. He said he was going to tell her that the things she had said to me were not acceptable and that if he heard anything like them again, they would be stepping back from family events for a period of time. I said that was more than I had expected. He said he should have done it sooner. I said yes. He said he wanted to ask me something. I waited. He said he wanted to know if I was willing to stay. I let the silence hold. He said he meant in the marriage. He said he wasn't asking about his family or the money or any of it right now. He said he was asking about us. I said I was there, wasn't I? He said he didn't want to assume. I said I was sitting in our kitchen drinking tea. I said I was there. Something in his face shifted. Not relief exactly. Something older than that. He said okay. I said okay. He called her the next morning at 8:42 a.m. I was in the other room, at the desk in the small office we kept off the hallway, where I usually worked on Saturday mornings if I had permits to review. I could hear the tone of his voice through the wall but not the words. He sounded even. Not raised. The kind of level that takes effort. The call lasted 23 minutes. He came into the kitchen when it was over. He set his phone on the counter. He stood there for a moment before he turned around. He said she had a lot to say. I waited. He said she had started by saying that she thought last night had been very emotional for everyone. That she had hoped we could talk privately as a family before anything else. I said I was sure she had. He said she thought I had been keeping score. That she had sensed it for years. That she was glad it had finally come out. I said that was interesting. He said she had also said she thought the notebook was a form of aggression. That she had never done anything to deserve that kind of record-keeping. I said what did he say to that? He said he had asked her to tell him about Christmas Eve 14 months ago. He said there had been a long silence after that. I didn't answer. He said she didn't remember it the way I had written it down. I said I was sure she didn't. He said she thought I was sensitive. That she had always tried to be careful with me because she knew I hadn't grown up the way Soren had. She said she had never meant anything unkindly. I said those were her words from last night. He looked at me. I said she had told me last night that I hadn't grown up in a large family. She had told me she had always tried to make me feel included. She had told me she thought I was sensitive. He said yes. I said I had 3 entries in the notebook. I said each one had a version of the same sentence in it. The sentence about understanding what it meant to build something together. The sentence about coming from the right kind of stock. He said she denied saying it. I said I knew she would. He said he believed me. I said I know. He sat down. He looked at his phone on the counter. He said she had also said she thought I was a difficult person to understand. She had said she had tried for 6 years to find the frequency. She had said she thought some people just operated on a different frequency and that wasn't anyone's fault. I said what had he said to that? He said he had told her that the frequency she was looking for was straightforward. He said he had told her that I had been direct about what I needed repeatedly, and that what had changed was that I had stopped accepting silence as an answer. I was quiet. He said she had paused for a long time after that. He said then she had said she hoped I hadn't poisoned the well with the family. He said he had told her the well was intact. He said he had told her this was between the 4 of us and that he had no interest in litigating it with the broader family. I said that was right. He said she had seemed relieved by that. I said I was sure she had. He looked at me. He said he had told her what he'd told me he was going to say. All of it. I asked how she had taken it. He said she had gone quiet. Then she had said she thought he was being reactive. That he would feel differently in a few days. That families went through difficult patches. I said what did he say? He said he had told her he meant it. He said he had told her the loan had a figure attached to it and she would be hearing from him about a repayment structure within the week. He said he had told her that the way she had spoken to me privately over the years was something he took seriously and that he expected her to as well. I said that was direct. He said he was tired of indirect. I didn't answer. He said she had said she hoped he would think about what he was asking of her. I said what had he said? He said he had told her he already knew what he was asking of her. And that he thought it was reasonable. I said okay. He said she had said at the end that she loved him. I said what did he say? He said he told her he knew. He said he told her he loved her too. He said the 2 things weren't in conflict. I let the silence hold. He looked at me. He said he wasn't sure how she was going to handle it. I said I had some idea. He said what did I mean? I said I thought she was going to come around. I said not quickly and not without some version of the conversation we had just had. But I said she was not someone who handled estrangement well. I said she would find a way to reframe it as something she had decided to do. He said that would be something. I said it would be enough. 3 weeks later, Ingrid came to the house. She called first. She asked if she could come on a Saturday morning. Soren was home. He opened the door and let her in and we sat in the front room with coffee and the rain coming in off the sound, streaking the windows in long gray lines. She was composed. She had brought something with her. A small plant in a terracotta pot, something with waxy green leaves and a white ribbon around the rim. She set it on the entry table when Soren let her in. She did not mention it again. I did not mention it either. We both knew it was there. She sat with her cup in both hands and she looked at me and she said she wanted to apologize. I waited. She said she was sorry if anything she had said had come across badly. She said she had always cared for me. She said she had not always shown it in ways that landed well. She said the dinner had not been her finest moment. She said she had been caught off guard. I said I understood. She said she had gone home that night and thought about what had happened. She said she had not slept well. She said she had talked to Rolf for a long time. I said I was glad they had talked. She said she hoped we could move forward. I said I thought we could try. She said carefully that she wanted to understand the financial side of things better. She said Rolf and she had talked. She said they wanted to be more mindful. I said the loan had a number attached to it. I said Soren had the figure. I said we were not in a hurry but we did expect it to be addressed. She said she understood. I said the other thing was simpler. I said going forward, if an event involved our money, the conversation would happen with both of us present, not through Soren after the fact. She said that was reasonable. I said I thought so. She looked at her cup. She looked at me. She said she hoped I knew she had never meant to make me feel outside the family. I said she had told me she had always tried to make me feel included. She said yes. I said she had also told me in her kitchen 14 months ago that she thought Soren needed someone who understood what it meant to build something as a family. She opened her mouth. I said she had said she meant it with love. She closed her mouth. I kept my voice even. I said I was not a different kind of stock. I said I was a person who had contributed $45,000 to this family because I believed in the marriage I had made and I wanted to be part of something real. She said nothing. I said I accepted her apology. I said I would come to Sunday dinners when I was invited and I would be warm and I would mean it. I said I did not need her to love me. I needed her to respect what I had brought to this family. She said she did. I said then we had something to work with. She looked at Soren. He looked back at her without expression. She looked at me. She said she thought I was very direct. I said I had learned it was necessary. She nodded once. She set down her cup. She said she thought it was good that we had talked. I said I did too. She stood up. She put on her coat. Soren walked her to the door. I heard her say something to him in the hallway low. I didn't hear what he said back. The door closed. He came back into the front room and sat down. I said what did she say? He said she said I was harder than she'd expected. I said what did he say? He said he told her she hadn't been paying attention. In February, Rolf came by the house on a Saturday when Soren was out on a recovery job and I was home alone. He knocked and I let him in and he stood in the kitchen and said he didn't want coffee. He said he had something for me. He held out his hand. In his palm was a brass boat key on a worn leather fob. The fob was the kind that came from a chandlery, a thick loop of leather stitched in a darker thread, with a small brass oval stamped with the name of his boat. He said the name quietly, the way people say a thing they have said thousands of times and still mean. He had owned the boat for 19 years. He had built the cabin on it himself, over 2 winters, working in the evenings after the salvage work slowed down. He said the loan was going to take some time to repay in full, but that he wanted to give me something real while they worked on it. Something that was his. I looked at the key. He said he knew it didn't equal the number. He said he knew that. He said he wanted me to have something that was his, something that meant something, while the rest got sorted out. He said he had thought about what to bring for a few weeks. He said this was what he kept coming back to. I reached out and took it. It was heavier than I expected. Warm from his hand. I said thank you. He said he knew the loan amount. He said he had looked at it with Ingrid and they had a number they could do each month, starting in March. He said Soren knew the figure. He said he just wanted me to know that he knew it too, and that it was not something he took lightly. I said I understood. He said there was one more thing. I waited. He said he owed me an apology of his own. He said he had known for some time that the balance in the family had been off. He said he had told himself it was not his business to speak to. He said he was telling me now that he had been wrong about that. I kept my voice even. I said I appreciated him saying it. He nodded once. He looked at the key in my hand for a moment. He said the boat was a good one. He said if I ever wanted to go out on the water I was welcome on it. He said Ingrid didn't much care for the boat. He said he usually went alone. He said it would be good to have company. I said I would take him up on that. He put on his hat. He went back out to his truck. I heard him back down the driveway. Then the sound of the engine faded and it was quiet again. I stood in the kitchen for a moment with the key in my palm. I thought about the fairy horn the night of the dinner. Low and long across the water. The way it had sounded like something leaving and something arriving at the same time. I had heard that horn on 100 evenings from our house on Fox Island, and it had always been a backdrop, something that registered and passed. That night it had stopped me. That night it had felt like it had something to say. I thought about the server in the private room, the careful young man who had set the black folder at the center of the table and waited to see who reached for it. I thought about Rolf's hands on the card, the deliberate way he had taken the folder and opened it and not looked up while he did it. I thought about Mikkel looking at the table throughout most of it. I thought about Britt's husband putting his phone down. I thought about the notebook in my desk drawer. The 11 pages of columns. The 3 entries in the back. I did not need to open it. I knew what was in it. The key sat in my palm. Heavier than it looked. Warm from Rolf's hand and now warm from mine. I set it on the kitchen windowsill where I would see it in the mornings. Then I went back to the table and sat down with my coffee. Soren sent me a message a few hours later. He was still out on the recovery job, somewhere off McNeil Island. The message said, Rolf called me. I didn't know he was going to do that. I typed back, I know. He typed, good? I looked at the key on the windowsill. I typed back, yes. The notebook stayed in my desk drawer for a while after that. I didn't look at it often. I didn't need to. I finished my coffee. I went back to work. Some things don't resolve cleanly. They just shift into something you can carry. I was learning slowly what that felt like. If this story stayed with you, I hope you'll share it. There are people out there who needed to hear it, and they might not know to look.